A model API call is the easy part. The hard part is proving who called it, from where, with whose money, and what the system was allowed to do. This is fluid coding in AI, and today we are turning the boring AWS controls into the developer checklist for real AI systems. The old demo was simple. Get an API key, send a prompt, print the answer, and decide whether the model felt useful. That is not where the risk sits anymore. Modern AI systems call cloud services, read repositories, run tools, stream responses, invoke agents, and generate spend. So the practical question changes from, did the model answer well, to, can this workload be governed when it starts doing real work? There are 3 layers worth separating. A model API returns model output when your code calls an endpoint. A coding agent uses a model plus tools, repository context, terminal access, file edits, tests, and iteration to complete software tasks. A managed agent runtime hosts agent code with infrastructure concerns around identity, sessions, isolation, long-running execution, versions, streaming, and observability. The product boundary moves from text returned to work performed. IAM matters because an agent is not just asking for text, it is asking for permission to act. AWS frames IAM around who can access which services and resources, under which conditions. For developers, that means roles, temporary credentials, least privilege, and guardrails are not paperwork. They are what separate an agent that can invoke one model and read one bucket prefix from an agent running with whatever your admin shell can reach. The useful version of least privilege is iterative. Start in a sandbox with enough access to learn the workload, then tighten based on evidence. IAM Access Analyzer can generate a policy template from CloudTrail activity over a selected period of up to 90 days. That is not a full audit system, and AWS notes limits around data events and pass role. But it gives developers a path from broad experimentation to narrower production permissions. PrivateLink answers a different question. What path does this traffic take? AWS PrivateLink lets clients in a VPC connect to supported services using private IP addresses, and traffic between the endpoint and the service stays on the AWS network. Bedrock supports interface endpoints for runtime, agent OpenAI, compatible endpoint paths. That does not replace IAM, encryption, endpoint policies, or application security. It gives network teams a concrete private boundary to review. CloudTrail matters when something surprising happens. It records AWS account activity, including who made a request, which service and action were used, and request parameters. For Bedrock, some runtime operations are logged as management events, while other runtime operations and agents for Bedrock runtime calls require data event selectors. CloudTrail is not a debugger transcript or a full record of model reasoning. It is the audit trail that helps reconstruct the caller, action, endpoint context, and timing. Billing sounds like finance, but it changes developer behavior. Cost allocation tags have to be activated before they appear in Cost Explorer or cost allocation reports. AWS also announced IAM Principal based cost allocation for Amazon Bedrock in April 2026, so Bedrock cost records can include the calling IAM principal and principal tags when enabled in Cure 2.0. The goal is not just to say AI is expensive. The goal is to know which role, app, or team caused the spend. AWS billing commitments matter because many AI projects are approved or blocked before the code is the hard part. Organizations already manage reserved instance and savings plans, discount sharing across accounts, and AWS pricing calculator models some purchase commitments. Separately, AWS and OpenAI announced that eligible usage of OpenAI models and codecs on Amazon Bedrock can apply toward existing AWS cloud commitments. For developers, that can move frontier model access from a separate procurement path into the cloud platform teams already govern. Bedrock provider configuration is where use the best model becomes a specific production choice. A developer may call a base model ID, an inference profile, a provision model, a custom model, or a marketplace deployment. Cross-region inference can use geographic or global profiles, and CloudTrail can record the source region plus the inference region. Two teams can both say they use the same model family while actually using different regions, endpoint paths, logging categories, cost profiles, and preview terms. In April 2026, AWS announced limited preview availability of OpenAI models, Codex, and Bedrock managed agents powered by OpenAI on Amazon Bedrock. OpenAI says customers can configure Codex to use Bedrock as the provider, and that OpenAI models on Bedrock include GPT 5.5. Benchmarks help explain why teams care about access to frontier models, but the benchmark claims here are provider-published, not locally reproduced. The bigger point is that stronger coding agents make governance layers more important. A managed runtime is not just a nicer wrapper around an API call. Amazon Bedrock AgentCore runtime is described as a secure, serverless hosting environment for agents and tools. It supports framework-agnostic agent hosting, session isolation with dedicated micro-VMs, long-running workloads up to 8 hours, authentication, observability, immutable runtime versions, and endpoints that point to versions. The developer question becomes operational. Where does state live? How are sessions isolated? How do we roll back? And what can we observe? Here is the practical test. If an agent made a risky change, called the wrong model, used the wrong region, or caused a bill spike, could you explain it tomorrow morning? You would need the IAM principle, the allowed actions, the network path, the endpoint policy, the model or inference profile, the CloudTrail event coverage, the cost owner, and the runtime boundary. If one of those is missing, the system may work, but it is not yet easy to trust. The verdict is simple. If you are only experimenting, use a sandbox and move fast. If you are building production AI on AWS, do not treat IAM, PrivateLink, CloudTrail, billing attribution, Bedrock configuration, and runtime choice as separate chores. They are the control plane for whether agents can safely do useful work. The winning setup is not the most locked down one. It is the one where developers can ship, and the organization can still answer what happened. If this helped you connect model APIs, coding agents, and managed runtimes to the AWS controls around them, like the video and subscribe to Fluid Coding and AI for more practical developer deep dives.